Hello, everyone. Welcome to Katalon webinar series. This is a series where we'll focus each week on different topics of test automations. And for this week specifically, we're focusing on API testings. And the topic for today's webinar will be how you can boost your API testing productivity with Katalon. We'll go into the high level of what API testing is about, some of the current trends that we're seeing in the marketplace, some of which you might be familiar with, things like API first, API as a product, how this is affecting teams in terms of how they're running their test automation in API. And last but not least is how you can potentially use Katalon to boost your API testing productivities. We will also have, our speaker will go into details on the demonstrations of how you can do that, kind of a quick demo so you can, see and visualize and experience how it can be done. And then we'll cap it up with, a Q&A session. We'll answer any questions you have. With that, I'll get started. Introduce about myself. My name is Antoine. I'm Business Solution Manager here at Katalon. My job here is to help company, understand, what they're trying to do and what's the gap between where they are today and where they're trying to be, and how Katalon can be the bridge to fill that gap. But yes, you want to introduce about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Bhagesh, and I work as a solutions engineer with Katalon. And I would be basically helping in the demonstration part of this webinar.
Wonderful. So here, let's get started. API testing. Sorry, we heard about API all the time. Sorry, what does it mean? What is this for? Essentially, it's for any applications, whether it's mobile app, web, or essentially any kind of product you see out there. There's multiple layers when it comes to that products. The products that we usually interacting with, that's called UI function testing, right? That's the piece where you interacting with the apps, whether you book a Grab or you make a money transfer transactions. That's a piece that we interact with the UI front user interface. There's also a layer that underneath to help run the applications. In this case, it's all the database that happen underneath. The API testing is performed where all the transactions happen between the UI, the upper surface that we interacting with the database layers underneath. And when these two, happening, that's when a lot of, how most of the apps are out there function, especially when the world of the IoT and internet is, proliferating. This has become more important than ever before to test API. Some example that you yourself might have experienced is, some of the API that Uber did with Google Map back a few years ago. So this is a major update, collaboration between the two that allow, first of all, Uber to reach more customer, and for the end users of Google Map specifically to quickly identify, book a Uber ride on the Google Map apps, as well getting information like, what is available, what is the estimate cost to book a Uber car at this point right now somewhere in New York. So you can just type in, just like you search any locations, where you are, where you want to go, and among of the different options, as you can see right here, beside driving, public transportation, walking, there is a ride-hailing options kind of come with, not only just Uber, but also Lyft. It tells you how many minutes it would take to estimate to get a cab right in front of you. Also the estimate cost as well. And you can also book them, make a request pretty easily right on the app. So this is a true win-win scenario. For Uber, that means better reach, ease of use. Same for Google, and then for the end user, that would be a simplest experience going from one place to the other without having to open it, even open Uber apps. Another example from a B2B perspective is Salesforce. So a lot of time, everyone heard of Salesforce. I think customer relation management database, or CRM. When a company having Salesforce CRM, that's where they store all the information to the customers, what they have been interacting in the past. Also, any kind of info, storing of contact info and any kind of info can help the company servicing their clients better. But most of the time, as a company having Salesforce is often a complex process, and data need to be vet. Especially when you integrate Salesforce with other tools like email, marketing functions, business intelligence, even just finance, right? All of that information need to be tested, and that's where the API piece running in. So not only you need to managing the Salesforce itself, but you also want to routinely check the data being passed along Salesforce with all the application that they've been integrating with to ensure that the data is clean, organized, and categorized the way that it should be. So here an example, for Katalon, we use Salesforce as a single source of truth. So we integrate Salesforce to many other different applications, and API testing. In this case, we use SOAP API to test and ensure that the data is indeed happening correctly. That's one way that this is an example of how API testing can be applicable in B2B environment. Okay, so with all of this, right, the macro trend that we're seeing is that API usage is increasing globally. There's some of the three major trends we are seeing right now is that there is a trend where API now is being used as a product. So company like Twilio, and many others as well, build a product just all around API. And what they helping company do is to communicate to customer better using text. I think the core example is Airbnb rely on Twilio to, provide customer a more simple experience, not just through the app, but also through the text and calling as well. So now customer can have multiple ways to get information, interacting with the system, making it as easy and simple as possible to book, check in and check out, and any activity related to Airbnb. API also recently get a lot of tractions when a company develop new products instead of focusing on the UI, UX. Now they're focusing on the API first because it's such a major piece of the products, especially for products that need to integrate with others like travel site, etc. So there is a emergence of API first as development goes. The last but not least, API now is not just a good to have when you integrate one app with the other. Rather, it's a must have, right? Now, if you integrate with another tool, API is on the product requirement, right? It's on the top priority list, and it's not on the second thoughts. All of this is being validated by some of the statistic that we see out here. 83 of all internet traffics belong to API-based services, and that's huge. That's more than 3/3, right? 3/4. Also, 67% of survey companies that we talk to heavily invest in API first development. Just to talk to how important it is to have API as the core of the development goals. So, okay, so when you have these API, when you do the testings, what is important that should be on your mind when you do API testing? There's 6 areas here. Many of the testing of API is still focusing a lot on the functionalities of the products. You also talk about the reliability. If they get great experience, good, but does it happen repeatedly in a way that expectable and reliable for the end user? You also talk about the performance of the API, right? So with website getting a lot of traffic, is the API still function properly? How is it performing under heavy load? There's also a piece of API testing that related to validations of data. When data transfer from one end of the tunnel to the other, is it emerging on the other side the way that we're expecting? There's also runtime errors and interoperabilities, just related to how well one app would working with the others. So these are some of the main 6 major aspects of API. Certainly, it doesn't cover everything. There's other API testing aspects like security, etc., which we not quite touch on today, but also quite relevant as well. So when you do API testing, So when we talk to quite a few team who doing API testing, there's three main properties that often come up. First is flexibility. Team want to have easier way to write new API tests. They also want ability to switch between REST and SOAP API should they want to. In fact, 94% of team using REST API architectures for API testing at the moment. They also want to use ease of use. Developers spend nearly 50% of their time on API, and that's a major boost from 40% just a few years ago. So if you're going to spend that much time on API and API testing and development, it's important that the tool that need to create API tests also need to be really easy, supporting some of the latest trend on low and no code. There's also a scalability issue as well. So over 94% of team reported they're planning to increase spending on API. So when you try to do a lot more testing, right, on API, adding headcount is not always the right solutions, especially if you're expecting, right, the growth of API use and traffic to grow exponentially. It's not going to be possible for you to grow your headcount exponentially, in that ratio as well. So you, as a, whether you're a QA head or products, you just need to start thinking about how can you scale better. Essentially, how can you do more API testing with, the same headcount or maybe a little bit more. So the rate at which your API testing coverage should be increasing faster than the rate at which you're adding the headcount to the team. And that's the scalability issues that many teams I talk to are facing right now. And that's kind of reflect into some of the top API platform initiatives that they're working on. The reason why they're expecting these initiatives to scale up so quickly because there is a much faster demanding in terms of development cycle for new apps. There's also a need to connect with internal application, not just on the client-facing front, but on the internal. So, example, if you have a bank's, website, you have an app, that's the piece that the customer interacting with. But there's also a piece where the bank needs to build out a UI for the bankers themselves to interact with the database available on site. So that's the internal application that we're referring to. And that means there's connect between CRM, between the financial systems, so that you can easily check how much money you have, what transactions you had, right? All of that needs to be checked and validated. There's also a need for create a developer ecosystems where developers have easy access to all the tools they need to do their jobs. There's also B2B partner program that focusing on API. So Twilio is example, Uber and Google Maps is another example I provided earlier. Also monetize API as a revenue stream, right? API as products, which I covered earlier as well. So I'm going to go a little bit detail. One of the biggest API testing tool that company are using right now is Postman. I checked, I think there was one survey said that over 80% of companies are using Postman right now for API testing. And of course, for good reason. Postman is great, has many of the advantages, allow team to really easily build out API testing. But there's also some of the limitations when it comes with Postman that prevent the team from scaling, what I said earlier, right? The scaling issues. So how can you get more works done with the same or just a little bit more headcount? So these are the main issue that a lot of the Postman user are facing. One is Postman is not built for automated test validations. So meaning you cannot validate, it's not easy to automate that process, validate when the data go in one tunnel and go outside the other tunnel. So making it hard to, not only just running tests, but also maintain the test at scale. There's also lack of reporting capabilities. That means there's little visibility as a product manager, as a the head of the function to know how is it going with the product and products when it comes to API wise. It's also hard to maintain the API test scripts on an ongoing basis. If you have 10, 20, 30, that might be fine, but if you have hundreds, thousands, that is another equation that you need to address. There's also no CI/CD integration support, and also no view, not view for to support team collaborations. So, if some of your team members know how to code and some of them don't know how to code, you need a tool that can essentially meet everyone's needs. And say if you were to grow your team to X, you need a solution that can grow with your team as well. That's another aspect of scalability that you need to address. So, if you're using Postman, here's how Katalon can help you boost your API testing productivities. With this list, I'll leave it to my co-presenter to go a little bit over in more details.
Yeah, thanks, and for giving us such a beautiful introduction around API testing and why it is gaining so much of market popularity these days. Just to continue with how Katalon can help you boost your API testing productivity, the first thing is Katalon has support for both REST as well as SOAP endpoints. So let's say if you are using REST APIs, you can perform API testing using Katalon. If you're using SOAP 1.1 or SOAP 1.2, that's also not a differentiator. You can perform API testing with Katalon without any issues. The second thing is capability to combine in UI and API verification. So when we speak about Katalon, Katalon completely offers an entire platform or an infrastructure which would basically allow you to perform each and every activity related to testing. So when we talk about desktop testing, API testing, mobile testing, web testing, all of these testings are covered. Now, there are certain scenarios in which you would like your API testing source to be incorporated along with the web testing or mobile testing. There is the UI testing or functional testing. There is also something which is possible. You can create hybrid projects in which you would be basically performing web testing or mobile testing. And along with that, you can make use of API keywords in between them to make API calls. The third is support for data-driven testing. Now, when we talk about real-world scenarios, we are not going to give hard-coded data to the APIs. We are always going to read the data from an external data file. And thereby, Katalon allows you to do a data-driven testing where it enables you to take the data from a CSV file or from an Excel file, or you can even integrate it with the database. Fourth thing is support for the assertion library, AssertJ. Now, we all might have heard about AssertJ, and we all might be using assertions in our test code, in our API testing. So we have support for AssertJ. There are lots of assertions that comes in handy whenever we have to check things, whether the response that we are receiving for an API request is proper or not, whether it is falling inside a specific category or not. We can all do that by making use of the assertion which is being provided by Katalon. So in case if there's anything that is not working as desired, the assertion would basically fail, leading to a test failure. And thereby it would become very much easier for you to identify at what particular step your test is failing. Then towards the end, we do provide flexibility as well. We know that not 100% automation can't be achieved at any given point of moment. There's always a room for custom test cases that you would be required to perform. There's some flexibility that we do offer to you in terms of built-in keywords. So these built-in keywords would behave just like a function, which means that you can call these built-in keywords at any point of time. And this basically helps you with the code reusability part as well. So let's say there's a specific built-in keyword or function that you have designed, and it is going to be used in multiple scenarios. You can just write it single time and you can make a call to it. Then we do provide you record and playback functionality with the help of the Katalon recorder. And you can also write in your custom test scripts and your code by making use of Java and Ruby. So it's just not like that you would be restricted to the record and playback functionality. If there are any changes that you would be required to make, you can incorporate those changes by inserting libraries or having any dependencies in Java or Ruby. You can do that. So that is also something which is possible. I think we can move on to the next slide now. So how, let's say if you are already using Postman or you are using any other service, how you can basically migrate onto Katalon without making that much of effort, because we don't want you to build all the things from the scratch just to migrate onto our platform. So on our dashboard, we have multiple options. You can import your test scripts from WADL. You can import your scripts from OpenAI. You can also import your test scripts from Postman as well. So all the test scripts that you have developed using Postman, you can import them in Katalon Studio without having any need to rework from the scratch. And the SOAP UI import is also something which is possible. So these are the different ways by which you can make use of the import service, which is being provided by the Katalon. So as to import your existing test scripts from most popular platforms onto the Katalon. And thereby Katalon would now take care of all your test scripts. Yeah, so we would deep dive into the demonstration now. Now you might have got a complete idea on the product, and you might have got an overview of API testing. We have talked about popular products as well. Now let's see how Katalon has things to offer that would basically overcome the limitations of the popular products that are existing in market currently, and how basically Katalon would help you with achieving your use cases. So I quickly share my screen with you, and let me know if it's visible. So this is the Katalon project that I've created. As I mentioned, Katalon can perform multiple types of testing, not just restricted to API testing. It can do web testing, mobile testing, and desktop testing. For creating a new project, you just need to click on File, you need to click on New, and you need to click on Project. You can give any name to your project, as it would be completely up to you, and you can select the type of project that you want to create. In this case, in interest of time, I created a project around API web services, and you can basically create this like this. So I already created one, that's why I'm not creating the another one. Now the beauty of Katalon is the UI that it offers. The UI is very simple, and for the new beginners, it might take 6 to 8 hours to learn the entire aspect of the tool or entire tool in itself. And this comes from my personal experience. Like when I was learning about this tool, it was very easy for me to adapt to this tool. And talking about the hierarchy out over here, now when I'm saying the UI is very user friendly, what do I mean to say? So on the left hand side, you can see the project structure. Now, when we talk about these things like test cases, it is pretty much self-explanatory. You can create multiple test cases, and test case is nothing but collection of actions that you're going to perform as a single unit. For creating test case, you just need to perform a single click and click on test case. You can provide name to a test case. Let's say I provide this name to a test case and I click OK, it would create a new test case for me. Now, once test case has been created, you can see this is an empty test case. This is the new test case that we have created. Now, just to add in the web service request or the API request, you can click here. There is API request, add web service request. And I have created certain API requests already. I can just drag and drop these. So this is how simple it is to create a test case and add in the API request inside that test case. Now let's say if you want to create a single test case that comprises of multiple API requests, can you do that? Yeah, that's also possible. You just need to add in multiple send request options. So this is just the one aspect. What I'll do is I'll first show you how you can create objects. Now objects are nothing but those part of the things that would be reused inside your test cases. So when we talk about, let's say, the SOAP request, here I've created 4 SOAP requests. And basically it is going to make use of a calculator application. And I'm going to show you how simple addition, subtraction, multiplication, division could be performed. So what I'll do is I'll copy this WSDL URL for creating a SOAP request. We'll create a SOAP request from the scratch just to show you how this thing could be done. And I'll click on web service request. I'll click addition duplicate. Since we already have one addition request, I don't want to get confused in between them. That's why I'm naming it duplicate. I'm selecting SOAP service here. I'll enter the URL, that is the WSDL URL, and I'll click on OK. Now, WSDL URL is nothing but an endpoint, and we have created this particular test object. Now, this URL comprises of multiple functions, as it is in calculator URL. There are multiple things that this particular calculator would be capable of doing. So what I click is I click on load service functions. We'd give it a couple of seconds, and Katalon would basically tell us all the things that this particular URL could do. So here it has identified all the functions that this URL could perform. There are 4 functions: addition, subtraction, multiply, and divide. You can select whatever function you want to perform or whatever API call you want to make. Now I'm going to click on add. And now what I'll do is I know that there would be some header for this API request. There would be some request message. That is the body which would be going in for the add request. As it's an add request, we must be passing 2 numbers so that we can add them. So what I'll do is I don't need to worry about all these aspects like having the headers incorporated and request message. I just need to click on load new content and click on OK. So as I've selected service function as add, Katalon would always take care of what is the message body that would be required so as to perform this operation, and what are the headers which would be essential so as to make this request. So as you can see, it has already pre-populated these fields. So there's an HTTP header that Katalon has pre-populated for us, and there's a request message as well. We are going to perform addition on 2 numbers, that is 3 and 3. The addition of 3 and 3 should return us 6. Now it's time for making a real API call. we just need to click on this button, that is the play button. And it says, do you want to save the changes? Yes, I do want to save the changes. And then it would make the request. On the left hand side, you can see it is sending one request. Now you'd wait for a couple of seconds for Katalon to complete the execution, and it should give us the desired result of ours. That is, addition should be 6. And here we can see the responses came up. The status code is 200 in case if you would like to download the half file or view the half file for this request that was made and the response that was received. You can do that from here. And in the response body, you can check that the result that we have obtained is 6, which is the desired result. 3 plus 3 should give us 6. Now let's move on to the other scenario. This is how simple it is. You just need an WSDL URL, and thereby you need to click on load service function. It would tell you all the functions that are there. So with just a single URL, I was able to perform the operation of addition. Similarly, I can do other operations as well, like division, subtraction, multiplication, etc. But I'm not going to deep dive into those. And let's see the other aspect of the tool. So we know whenever we do perform operations like addition, subtraction, basically we read the data from the data files, or we would basically be using some variables. We are not going to give hard-coded string. In the previous example we saw in the request message, we gave hard-coded string, like we gave out over here 3, and in here we also give 3. So addition result was 6. But let's say if I want to make use of a variable, can I use that? Yeah. In the variable section, you can click on add, and you can create a new variable. So basically, I created 2 variables out over here, that is A and B, and you can edit the variable name and assign the value to this variable, decide which type of variable it should be. But I'm not going to do that, since I already created 2 variables. I'd basically delete this one. And I'm going to use these 2 variables, that is A and B. Value assigned to A is 3 and value assigned to B is 5. If I go to the request message back again, instead of using 5, let's use the variable itself. I'll use the $sign for the variable. And I'll pass B here. So just going to add 2 variables for us. The 2 variables are A and B. And now let's make this API call. If we make this API call, we should get our result. And results in this case should be addition of 5 and 3. It should be 8. Yeah, as you can see, it is giving us the addition results as 8. So this is how you can make use of variables. Now there are lots of other aspects in the tools as well. So I think you might have understood about the SOAP services, how you can make use of SOAP services, how you can basically create the API requests and send them. And now coming on to the REST services, you can create REST services as well. And how easy it is to do, it's just as easy as SOAP services. You need to click on new, you need to click on web service request. You need to select RESTful here instead of SOAP. Previously, we were using SOAP. Now you need to select REST. I'll show you one example that I already created. It's around get user information. So here we are going to make an API call to this endpoint. Since it's an get request, we do not need any HTTP body. Hence, we do not have any body out over here. But what it will do is it will get information for a user. And if here from here, I can select the type of the request. I selected it as get. I'll save this file and let me save it. Yeah. And now I'll click on play button. So this would basically state Katalon to perform this API request on my behalf. And here Katalon is performing a get request. Let's give it a couple of seconds. It should fetch in the information of the user for us. So user information would have multiple fields. It should contain ID, it should contain name, and we can see here that Katalon has fetched all these fields for us. So it has given us the entire information about a specific user that we have requested for. Now, the most important use case that we come across is validation of the response that we are getting now. If we are talking about the automated API testing, we want the automation to take care of the status that we are getting. It should assert the status, should verify that whether we are getting the proper status, response status from the server, and whether there are specific fields present in the response or not. So that is also something which is achievable using the verification tab. So if I click on verification tab, I get to see all these snippets that are here. What I do is I quickly maximize the screen for you. Give me a second. Yeah. So out over here, you can see that there are multiple code snippets available. In case if you would like to get current response, you can use this code snippet. In case if you want to check whether the status code is 200 or not, you can use this specific code snippet. And how easy it is to use these code snippets. Let's say if I go to this line and I want to check towards the end that status code is equal to 200, I just need to click here. And you might be able to see that it has added additional lines in my code. It would verify the response and it would check whether the status code is 200 or not. And it is doing an assertion as well. So in case if status code is not 200, it's something else, it would fail the test case for me. If I'll remove this because I already added these lines towards the top, as you can see, these lines are out over here. Now, it's not always necessary that you would be getting a successful status code and it would be in terms of 200 only. So we know that any status code that is being received in terms of 200 or 2xx range shows that the request was successfully processed. And thereby what we have done is we can pass the array list as well. So it would verify whether the status code that we are receiving in response matches 200, 201, 2 or 202 or not. So for this, we also have a code snippet. Here you need to click on status code successful request. So it would basically create this code snippet. Let's see this in action as well. I'll click here back again. And it has created that thing towards the end. It has appended the thing. You can see there's a new line that is coming in towards the end. I'll basically show that to you. Just give me a second. Click here. Yeah, now I think you should be able to see on your screen that it has sent a code snippet where it is getting the response object and it is checking whether it has got a status code which is matching these three fields. If status code that is returned by the response is in range of 200, 201, 202, then it would basically pass that particular assertion. Otherwise, it would fail this assertion. Similarly, you can do pretty much other operations as well, like identifying whether there is a specific string present inside the body. So here we can see that I have been checking or validating whether the ID is present or not. So here in the response, we can see that there's an ID and value of ID is 2. So here we have data ID 2. And I'm also checking for the first name, whether the first name is Janet or not. And here we can see the first name is Janet. So what I do is just to make this API call run with the all assertions, I need to click on this arrow button on here, and I need to click on test request and verify. So it will send requests as well, and it would also verify the assertions that we are passing in. Let's see this in action. So this is basically the same API request that we are making a call to, but this time it would work along with the verification parameters that we have provided. So it would check for the body, whether it's status 200 or not, whether the status is falling in the range of 200, 201, 202 or not. What's the ID that we are getting in the response? And along with that, what's the first name and whether it matches the first name string that we have been passing here. That is Janet. Yeah. So out over here, we can see that this is the response that we have received. And if I go on verification logs, it seems like all the verification logs or all the assertions are passing. You can see the first name out over here is Janet. It has validated that. And we can also see that there's a field named as content type in the header. And this content type is set to this specific string. We can also see the ID is equal to 2. So, and the status code that it has written is 200, and it falls in the range of 200, 201, 202. So this is the validation aspect that Anne was talking about that is missing with most of the tools, and which is the capability that is provided by Katalon, which would make life very much easier. So when we talk about automation, we don't want any manual intervention. We don't want to see what's the status code, whether we are receiving something in response. So Katalon code snippets would take care of those aspects for you as well. So that was about one such operation. Similarly, you can perform other operations as well. Like we just saw the get operation. You can perform delete operation as well by specifying in the HTTP authorization in case if you have any. Let's say I have basic authorization. And this endpoint is behind basic authorization. I can specify username and password. If I want to make use of some other type of authorization like OAuth 1, OAuth 2, I can do that as well. So that's about the authorization part. Now we have seen the get request. Now let's see a post request. And if I click here, it will basically show me a post request where I'm creating a new user. And these are the things that I am passing in inside the HTTP body. The endpoint is same, but instead of get, I am using post here. You can select the post method from the dropdown. And if I click on, if I save it, and if I run this, and click on test request and verify, So here also I'm creating certain verifications. When I'm creating a user, the response should have ID for the new user that I've created. And it also should give me a timestamp on the event of the user creation. So these are the things that I'm going to validate, whether these are the fields that are present in the response text or not. And the request is being made. We can see that Katalon is sending requests for us, and we have ID and created at field present here. Status is 201. If we go under verification logs, it has verified that these two fields that we were waiting for, that is ID and the created at, both of these fields are present in the response. So this is about Katalon, how it makes life easier when it comes to API testing. Now, going on to the other aspects, let's say if you want to create a test case in which you would like to perform all the operations that you have listed here, all the objects that we have listed here, addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. Can you do that inside a single test case? You can do that. So let me show you a SOAP operation. This is the test case that I've created. And here you can see I'm performing addition, division, multiplication, and I think here I performed division back again, but I can change it to subtraction. Give me a second. Yeah. So I'm performing all the four operations here. And towards the end of each and every operation, I'm just verifying whether the status code that I am receiving is equal to 200 or not. Now, how you can verify this? You just need to click on add service keyword. There are multiple keywords in here other than the send request. So you can basically do all the things that we have seen inside the code snippet. Now, in this case, I have to verify response status code. So I'll click this one. There is this one, and I can specify the response status code and response object. So here I'll pass in the response object by specifying that it's a variable and its name is response. And here I'll specify the status code that we should have on. I'm going to cancel this one and delete this step since I already done this. And now I'm going to click on the play button. So it would perform all the four mathematical operation for us by making API call, and towards the end, it would verify whether the response code for all these operations is as intended or not. There is 200. If I click this button, it shows the job is in progress. We'll give it a couple of seconds. Yeah, and the job is running. So it shows you the real-time progress, like it is performing step 2, and you can see how fast execution is. And basically 0.017 seconds, it has, or 4.705 seconds, it has completed all the 4 API requests, and it has also performed the validation on the response code that was being received. So this is how fast API testing is with Katalon. And this is about the test case around REST. Similarly, you can around the SOAP operations. Similarly, you can create test case around REST operations as well, as I have created in here. And here I'm checking for the response code. I'm doing assertions as well, different type of assertions. Let's see that in script mode and how it would look like. So all the things that we have already gone through, when I'm making an update operation, I'm seeing whether these two fields, that is ID and updated at, is present in here or not. I'm checking for the status code. I'm checking for I'm providing an assertion for the status code. All these things could be achieved in the test case as well. So all the things that we have already seen that were being achieved in the object repository by using code snippets, those things could be achieved in test cases as well. A test case would allow you to basically make use of multiple objects, and you can use a single object as addition object in multiple test cases as well, which enhances the code reusability. So this is about the test cases section. Similarly, in case if you would like to make use of an BDD approach or test data driven approach, that is also something which is possible. You just need to click on data files for test data driven approach, and you click on test data. It would show you what kind of data you are trying to import in Katalon. It could be Excel, CSV, database data, or an internal data. And I'll click cancel as of now for the moment. And this is how API testing could be performed. Now, going back to the reporting part, what you could do is you could basically create test suites. Now, test suites, as its name suggests, is nothing but collection of test cases. I created 2 test suites already. And in order to create test suites, it's a very easy task. You need to perform right click, click on test suite. And once test suite has been created, you can add test cases in this test suite. So it shows me all the test cases that are present there in this project. And I can add these test cases by clicking this box in the test suite. I already added one test case in here. And let's say if I want to email the reports after the completion of the execution, What I could do is I could specify the mail recipients section. In the mail recipient section, I can specify my email address, and towards the end, I would be getting a report of the execution. Similarly, if I want to do a parallel execution, what I could do is I could create test suite collection, which is nothing but collection of multiple test suites, as its name suggests, and I can specify the parallel aspect and how many instances I would like to run in parallel. So here are two different test suites, and both of them would run in parallel since maximum current instances is two, which would basically save lots of your time. So this is about the test suite collection, and you can also specify the retries. So let's say in case if your test case or test suite fails, you want to retry the execution, you can do that as well. Number of retries you can specify. And if you want to retry all the execution, you can select that box, or if you only want to retry those executions that have failed, that is those test cases that are failing inside a test suite, that could also be achieved. So that's about the Katalon Studio and Katalon Recorder. Now coming on to the reporting capabilities, what I do is I quickly switch on to Katalon Desktops. Now on this dashboard, you can see that it shows us the overview of the test runs that we have been doing, and it shows that to us for this week and last week. Now, the one question that might arise is why only for 14 days? Because this is a dashboard and we want you to focus majorly on the recent activities or the recent status of your build. But if you want detailed report, you can do that as well by clicking on the report section. You can select the time stamp for which you would like us to present you the report. You can select the dates. And if I filter these test reports by test runs, I get to see that I have executed certain tests around the API. And this is the project that I have, API testing. If I click on the ID, I would get to see the detailed report for the same. So out of here, you can see that I've executed two test suites and both of them have passed. That's why this entire status bar is green. And that's the dream of many of us, to keep this status bar as green. And in the duration section, it would give you an entire trend on the test runs and how much is the duration for the test execution. As of now, I already executed one test case. So that's why it is showing me that the execution duration was 16 seconds. It shows me the environment on which this particular test case was executed. Since it was executed on my own local machine, it shows that it was my own agent. And it shows both the test suites that were executed in that test suite collection and the time duration which it took them to complete the execution. So one of the tests executed in 9 seconds, another one executed in 10 seconds. Both of them were executing in parallel. And the total time that was taken was, I think, 16 seconds, including sending the reports to the Microsoft Teams, sending me an email and other parameters. So this is how Katalon could prove as a one-stop solution in case if you want to gather the requirements or gather the information on the results. That is also something which you could achieve. Now, coming on to the other aspect, you can create an agent on which you would like to run your test cases on. You can run it across on the test environments. So for first thing you need to do is you need to have the link to create Git script repository. I uploaded my code already. You just need to specify a repository URL, and then you can schedule your test cases directly from Katalon. So here I have linked this particular Git repository of mine, and how you get the code from Katalon Studio to Git. Now there's a direct integration for that as well. You can click here and you can commit, you can push your changes. All these things would be achieved without making use of the CLI tool. When we talk about the repository, I've already linked it. And in case if I want to execute my test cases, how can I do that? So this is how calendar looks like. I call it as a Katalon calendar. In the virtual setup, we might be seeing the Google calendars, multiple meetings that we do have scheduled each and every day. So we are quite used to these calendars. And this is how Katalon calendar would look like. Let's say if you want to schedule a test run, what you could do is you could name that test run. I'll name this as, let's say, API test run. And I can select the repository. I can select the test suite or test suite collection. I'll select test suite, let's say. It shows me all the test suites that are present there, REST test suite and SOAP test suite. Let's say I select SOAP. I can select the execution environment, and I can specify the start date as well as the end date. In case if I would like this test case to trigger itself in a specific cadence, I can do that as well. So Katalon would basically cover the task of CI tool for you as well. And towards the end, I can click on schedule. So this would get scheduled. You can see that this test case of mine has already performed its execution on April 20, that is yesterday, and it has completed its execution. This is the ID 41 associated with that run. Similarly, you can create your release planning as well with Katalon. So it's a completely one-stop testing solution. We would have loved to explore all the aspects of the tool, but today we are just going to restrict ourselves to API testing in interest of time. And I just wanted to give you an overview on how Katalon test ops could pitch in and help you with the reporting capabilities, with the execution part as well. If you are not using CI, or even if you are using CI, how you can directly schedule your test cases so as to be getting triggered from the Katalon test ops. You can do release planning and test management as well. You can run your test cases on Docker. You can run it across on Kubernetes environment, the isolated environments that we talk about as with Katalon. So that was all that I had to share. And in case if you have any questions, we would love to take those questions towards the end. But for now, I would pass on the stage back again to N. So N, over to you.
Wonderful. So that's just a great, good to know. It's a very comprehensive, demonstration of API capability, Catalan. Just to wrap it up, some of the next few minutes, just talking kind of, what we see as the futures of testings and test automations, and what we're able to see is that a lot of companies right now, the tech stack for QA is so complex. You can easily have 10, 20 different applications just to run your QA. And imagine, if you're a bank, if you have to manage applications across environments and systems, right? Think of it as if you have web testing, if you have to manage it on Chrome, Firefox. If you have a mobile phone, you have to manage it on Chrome, Android, iOS, and all of these would blow up if you have a lot of different products you have to manage. So this is a growing pain that QA teams are going through. To help company addressing this, right? Company imagines in play is a next futures of QA need to be a end-to-end continuous quality platform, and that's what we're trying to achieve here is that we have a central place where the QA folks can orchestrate various activity from writing tests, executing tests, managing them, optimizing them, and then there's multiple ways you can write a test, right? As we showed earlier, so much more valuable and easier for teams to collaborate when you can write multiple ways you write, some of which including coding, some of which just a record and playback, and then there's multiple options in terms of execution, right? Locally, host environments, or a virtual machine. And then what's most important of all is a centrally place where all the data is being collected. So for the head of products, for the managers, they can have real-time insight into what is going on with the product. Is it ready for release or not? And ultimately, all of this add up together is allow you to release with confidence. Are you confident that your release will operate as no defects at all, right? That will be the questions that every single time you release, you have to ask yourself. And Katalon end-to-end platform aim to making that a lot easier. And that's kind of what you see on the screen right here. I'll skip the details. Here are some of the way in which how Katalon can help. We'll see company using test automation able to significantly using low and no code option to reduce test creation time 95%, increasing regression testing speed, also 90% reduction in test maintenance efforts. And there's a lot more that I can share with you if you're interested. These are some of the incredible customers that are currently using Katalon right now to have with their API testings, UI testing, etc. And the last but not least is a Q&A portion.
Okay, so oops, apologies. So we're coming a point to the Q&A portion. So I think we have two questions for us. So let me reshare my screen. I'm making a mistake right here. Okay. So the two questions I have is one, does Katalon support REST and SOAP API testing at the same time? I can take that question. So the answer is yes. So I know, based on what I mentioned earlier, 94%, I think 80 or 94% of the company are using REST API at the moment, and we support that. But we're also supporting SOAP API as well. I think but guess, can you maybe go a little bit on detail? I know we support REST and then SOAP 1.1 and 1.2, I believe, if I
Yeah,
remember
and
correctly.
that's correct. So we
Sure.
do support both of them, REST as well as SOAP. And as you correctly mentioned, we support SOAP 1.1 as well as SOAP 1.2.
Wonderful. Another question is, can we see result of execution in the drill down versions? You want to take these questions?
Yeah, sure. So on Katalon test ops, basically, as we saw in the demo, you would be able to see in the session reports as well. So when I execute, let's say, a test suite collection, I get to see all the test cases or test suites that are under it. And I can basically drill down to the reports and identify at what stage the test is failing and what is the flakiness, what is the average duration, what is the trend in the time which is being consumed by the test cases to complete the execution. So all of that is again possible with Katalon test ops.
Wonderful. Any other questions the audience has for us? I know we have a few minutes left.
Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to share those questions with us. This is the perfect moment to do that.
Okay, I'm gonna type my emails to everyone here. So should you have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out to me. Again, I'm here to help bridging the gap between what you want to do and what you are at the moment. So should you have any question about API, I know, when people hear about Katalon, they often think of us as a test creations, but there's a lot more, right? Besides test creation, you also have, how do you execute a test in a way that would optimize, your runtime, your execution time, and how do you best managing these tests. So all of this I can help and assist and walk you through it, or provide some ideas how it happen. I think that is pretty much about it. I guess thank you everyone for your time for joining us today on this webinar. Again, should you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. Next week we also have another sessions of the same series, some of which we'll announce the topic shortly after. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have an awesome day. And thanks for joining in.